very, very disturbed by the amount of negative energy. And so the idea of higher powers, not just angelic, I'm not even addressing angelic, because we do have angel presences, as most of us have felt throughout our lives, and we do have archangel presences who do other things on the planet. They watch out for the elements. They give special permission for certain interferences, even though they're not supposed to interfere. If somebody's not supposed to freeze to death, there's a very famous story of a young boy coming home from college in a snowstorm, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And I've experienced that, having come from New York and Connecticut. And his tire went out, and all of a sudden a tow truck pulled up, and he said, "Oh, I can change that tire for you." In the middle of nowhere, by the way, in the middle of the night. And the guy changed the tire, and he said, "How much do I owe you?" He said nothing, and he says, "Oh, let me give you something." He went back to the car to get some money for the guy, turned around, and there was no tow truck. And guess what else? There was nothing. No tire tracks in the snow. Just his own footprints. So the universe is very busy on this planet trying to run interference for things that should or should not happen. And since they're people just like us, but in a higher spiritual level, they've already been there and done that with the mistakes that have been made on this planet and continue to be made under the name of greed and power. And they know the best way to positively influence people. For instance, I was watching King Abdullah from Jordan being interviewed by Piers Morgan last night. And he was appointed over his uncle, his father's brother. He was appointed over him. Why? Because he's American and English educated. He's a brilliant man. He's a brilliant economist. Just listening to him speak, you're astonished at how worldly he is. He and his father have done light years of work ahead of the rest of the Middle East in educating women, making sure people get the proper housing and everything they need. And they still have the tribal custom of meeting with the king on a regular basis, as well as tribal leaders and communities, which I find fascinating because they still keep that contact with the everyday individual. And they have maintained a level of credibility that's basically unmatched, except perhaps for Bahrain, which doesn't have as much intellectual freedom for the poor people as they do in Jordan. So that is a positive person being positively influenced by UFO thought. And negative people are also being negatively influenced, but they're being negatively influenced by astral beings. And when you're on a physical planet, you're dealing not only with the physical body, but you're dealing with the soul. So the people who actually have predominance in the influence would be our relatives from other planets. So they're the ones who are trying to do the best to see the planet doesn't go off course. Does that answer your question?
It really does. Thank you so much for that. Just a great answer. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I appreciate your call. Thank you. Okay, and we've got another call? Oh, okay. Caller, first name and comment or question. Oh, we lost the caller? Okay, hopefully, caller, you'll call back. And when you think about it, this is a very intelligent way to run an entire solar system. This is an intelligent way to run a galaxy and a super galaxy. Years ago, I was criticized by people who said when I said that someday they'll discover that there's a super galaxy that we are part of. They said, "Oh, geez, Linda, you're not an astrologer. You don't know everything." Well, of course, now it's old hat. It's old hat that we're part of a super galaxy. The Milky Way is a part of a bunch of other galaxies that are in this giant super galaxy. And there are super galaxies all over the universe. There are also, listen carefully, super galaxies that exist only in the astral world. Because the beings on the super galaxies have risen above the level of being or needing to be in physical form. So they exist to finish off a lot of astral karma. Now that is a very ancient super galaxy with all the other galaxies inside of it and all of the solar systems inside of it. And those people are also doing something else for the world. All their positive vibrations are radiating out to the planets that exist in physical form, like this one, and the solar systems that exist in physical form, because they have a close remembrance of what it is like to be on a physical planet in physical form. So they are vibrating positive energy, positive thoughts, positive prayers towards us, so that we can do our best to be inspired by goodness, that we can do our best to create goodness, not just for us here. I think it's the Iroquois nations and I'm trying to do two things at once. I don't know, it's the Lakota Sioux or the Apache that say, when you perform a deed, you must consider 7 generations from now and how that will affect or be affected by your decision. So they don't just think of today and tomorrow. They think 7 generations ahead. And if everybody thought that way, we wouldn't have people running around doing drugs, getting drunk, smashing their cars, killing other people. And we wouldn't have people like the crooks in Florida who think it's a great idea to build in the wilderness and the wetlands. There is enough property in this state that is buildable. Why they are constantly trying to drain the wetlands and get permits? Well, Rick Scott, who I think is one of the worst people to govern in any state in the world, and that's a large statement, has brought so many crooks with him that it's almost impossible to keep people out of the Everglades. And believe it or not, the Everglades happen to be unique on the planet. There's no other ecosystem that matches it. And I'm not just talking about the anacondas and the pythons and the boa constrictors that are loose, because they've got to try to do their best to round them up. But the water system and how it purifies rainwater and how it purifies toxins is essential to the survival of Florida and perhaps some of the Bahamas, perhaps Cuba, because of course water filters down. When I lived in Connecticut, the water that I was using out of my well came from Canada. And they could trace back to exactly this spot in Canada. So think about dumping something today. It's not only going to affect the area that you are dumping something, whether it's paint or some other kind of toxin, but think about the people 50, 100, 500 miles away. This is a problem in North Carolina with the hog farms, by the way, because the hog farms, all of the so-called standard pollution ponds, have been seeping into underground water down to South Carolina and Georgia. If you drop something on the ground, it's going to have an effect somewhere. So when we come back from our little quick break, we have another caller on the line. We are going to be picking up more on UFOs and what your experiences may or may not have been, and then I'll share mine. Stay with us. We're coming back for more Metaphysically Speaking.